It has been 3,303 days since Rainbow Six Siege launched, and while we still know the main gadgets, weapons, and features, there's a lot of forgotten things in Siege that only OGs will remember, like how operators and guns are not the only things that get nerfed in this game. 1,603 days ago, Ubisoft had to nerf something that was terrorizing innocent Siege players, and I'd bet money that most people watching this video right now are not going to be able to guess what that was. There used to be a plant on favela that would kill people that stood next to it. Yes, a literal house plant. And if you like that, then you're gonna love the rest of this video because I put together a ridiculous list of things that you forgot about Rainbow Six Siege. Shout out to the Gazebo Meister because he's put together a ton of old Siege compilations. Go check out his channel, and together with my footage, I was able to put together this crazy video. So sit back and enjoy. There used to be some really crazy hacks in the game. Back in the day, people would just blatantly hack. Right now, it seems like everybody tries to like hide it or closet cheat. There used to be hacks where you could literally just vault up into the sky, shoot random parts of the sky, and kill the entire other team. It was ridiculous, and the kill cams were even crazier. I don't even understand how this worked. It seemed like they would need to get like a vault prompt, and then it would just fly them straight up in the air, and then they would just shoot everybody. They don't even need lines of sight on the people. When I first switched to PC, Dansum Woja taught me the bandit slide trick. If you placed your gadget deployment on advanced, you could have two barbed wires that were placed really far distances from each other, and you could click to deploy a battery and then slide across crazy surfaces. You could even do this and then lead into a drop shot. It threw a lot of people off guard and pissed a lot of people off. This was the best Sledge Elite glitch that ever existed in the game. Honestly, they should leave it in. A terrifying hack that used to exist was hackers that could sprint with Clash and shoot at the same time. There used to be a bug where you could actually pick multiple of the same operators. But like the creator of this video mentioned, just imagine if there were cap cans, you would have 25 traps to worry about. In the alpha build of Siege, Ash's breach charges actually couldn't break open castle barricades. They would just bounce off and fly straight back at you and could kill you. By crouching in specific spots on the bottom of staircases, you could actually make your character become 2D. This also worked on laundry stairs on Oregon. Another ridiculous hack was defenders could rappel. The replays are crazy. This one is Ella literally rappelling up into the sky like upside down Spider-Man and just shooting everybody in the ruin spawn. What the fuck? This is the old kitchen window, and this was absolutely a terrifying sight to play when you were playing against the old Blackbeard. One of the craziest things about old Clubhouse is that there used to be no construction. You'd have to go downstairs and then back up the other staircase if you wanted to get to the other side or do an outside flank. You could also get crazy angles onto the bomb site if you would just stand on top of the cache roof. There was this really common pre-fire when the kitchen window still existed on old Chalet. You could just vault up on top of the cliffside spawn rock and then just shoot through this wall. It would go through the trophy door and hit a lot of people. You could even take this one step further and parkour to the south side of the cliffside rock spawn and have an even deeper angle, and I'm pretty sure you could even shoot like that trophy wall from here. There used to be a spot where you could place a frost mat and hookah, and anybody that vaults over this counter, their head would actually hit that frost mat through the floor and it would go off and kill them. A crazy cheat that used to be pretty common was when hackers would use a ridiculous FOV and then just run up to random objects, vault, and it would allow them to teleport wherever they want. People seem to think that this is a very early build of Rainbow Six Siege, but it's so old that it could have just been something from Rainbow Six Patriots also. It is interesting to see that the placeholders for the logos for the attackers are the Splinter Cell logo and the Assassin's Creed ones. Either way, it does kind of possibly look like maybe a really early build of Fairford Base. A while back, Ubisoft let me, Bola, and King George play a build of the game where Vigil had a 1.5 scope. It felt like one of the most busted things that existed in the game at the time, and it never made it to the live build, but it was pretty fun for the couple hours that it lasted. And random thing, but I'm pretty sure I have the world's first Vigil 1.5 scope kill. You used to be able to take hostages to this specific spot on plane and throw them off of the edge, and you would win the round before they hit the ground. Now when you throw hostages off of the roof, even if they get close to the extraction, they go down and you're gonna have to revive them in order to win. Hackers used to have a way to be able to launch themselves up into the sky and fly around the map. It was ridiculous. This one is crazy. This is the longest ever recorded round in Rainbow Six Siege, at least that I'm aware of. According to the times mentioned in the length of this video, we believe this round was somewhere around an hour and 20 minutes. And this wasn't even in a ranked game. This is a casual game of secure area. What makes this even better is this was so early in the game that the player recording this video right now was a level 1. And at the end of the clip, you're going to see what happens to their rank. Probably one of the best Rainbow Six Siege uploads of all time.
Oh! Fucking did it! Yeah!
Yeah, that was...
Hour and 12 minutes.
That was so good.
There used to be a glitch where orcs could literally send Fuse flying through the map. If Fuse placed his cluster charge at the right time, right before orcs charged him, he would send him flying and then the Fuse would just be stuck in place, literally just standing there. Article 5 was the final mission in the situations of Rainbow Six Siege before they took him out, and in this, Mozzie had his very own customized uniform. There used to be a stack of Christmas presents in the corner of Fireplace Hall, and you used to be able to vault up on top of them and then use it to window run and have an angle that would go all the way down the left side of the Christmas market spawn. You can't even run into windows now, and we used to be able to get into almost every single window. This was another cool window run. This was from admin office on consulate. You used to be able to vault up on top of this cabinet and then run out and spawn peek this side of the map. There used to be a balcony that wrapped from master window all the way to office, and because the outside detection time was 3 seconds, as a defender you used to be able to go for flanks after losing office control and you wouldn't even get detected. If you knew where a victory screen took place, you used to be able to put a claymore and it would kill whoever was standing on it. I never understood how this one worked, but there used to be a Spider-Man glitch where you could literally just run up a wall. When Bartlett University first came out, there was a secure area site that was 2 floors, which naturally led to some ridiculously long rounds. I don't believe there is a recorded round that ever got to that original like 1 hour 20 record, but it was still pretty crazy. Back before friendly fire was a thing in the prep phase, Cav could down every single teammate on her team because no matter where you shot him, it was a down. And then if the Cav quit out, your entire team would just die and lose. There used to be a Legion hostage glitch where you could actually have a friend hurt the hostage and then Legion would go prone, throw a goo mine at the ceiling, and then as long as they quit out before that goo mine hits the ground, the goo mine will still be there, but it doesn't have a character to blame it on. And for whatever reason, it would count as the attackers downing the hostage, and then it would give the defenders a free round. There used to be a crazy Fuse speed bug, and the way you could pull it off was actually ridiculous. You had to do a crazy series of events. You had to break the glass, place a breach charge, go on rappel, go upside down, and then once you rappel in, you flip back right side up and then place your Fuse charge at the same time. After you do that, your character would kind of like tweak out, and to yourself in first person, you would look normal, but to everybody else, you would be going at Mach speed. Sometimes this could also put you sideways, and if that was the case, you're just nerfing yourself. I would probably just be puking if this actually happened to me. In the basement of old Hereford base, you used to be able to place a mirror on this single wall, and if you broke it and then placed a C4 inside of it, it was for some reason completely silent to the other side. And this is back in the days before Ace, before Maverick, and so thermites would just come up here, try to detonate on the single wall, and then they would just get completely blown up through the reinforced wall C4 mirror trick. In OG Siege, sometimes when you get knocked, your character would literally just randomly get pushed back and teleported to a different part of the map. And if you got revived after doing that, your character would be pushed into the ground. On Old Clubhouse, there were these yellow tinted windows above the catwalk, and you could actually shoot through it. Back during this time, you couldn't yellow ping on drones. It would take some coordination, but it was possible. A lot of people will never know the feeling of a bomber running at you in T-Hunt, or walking into a room that's just filled with C4s waiting to go off, or a room that's filled with barbed wire. There used to be a bug with Frost's SMG where you could actually single tap fire it faster than full auto.
This is full auto. And then I'm gonna shoot. Tell me if it's faster.
That's faster.
Yeah.
Another crazy hack that used to be around is that you could do a full auto Twitch drone. I don't remember if this was back when Twitch drones did huge damage or not though. This is some early development footage of Sledge, and it's pretty interesting because it looks like he's breaking out just sections of the window, not destroying the entire thing with one go. And it looks like they actually used like a full-on door, not just pieces. With barbed wire, it looked like you could just throw it down. You didn't have to like open it up and place it. And old shields from early development actually had a slit in it, which is interesting because shields now also have a bunch of slits in them. Barricaded windows also had a slit in it, which would be amazing for spawn peaks. Playing an attic on Oregon as a defender used to be a lot harder because similarly to the chalet kitchen window, there was one for the attic here. Not a lot of people remember this. If you were playing on defense, you could even get angles by vaulting up onto these sandbags really close to white stairs. OG Siege players will remember that there used to never be milliseconds on the countdown. This means that in very, very crazy rare circumstances, you could actually still win a round even if the timer hit 000. Now there are milliseconds in the game, so that doesn't happen anymore, but really rare clips like this do exist if you look hard enough. Shout out to Tokyo from Spotbusters for giving me this one.
Nice.
On Old Chalet, there were 5 windows that would overlook and lead to the garage outside Snowmobile. I figured out perfect C4 lineups where you could just simply stand and throw, and you could have C4s land on any place depending on where the thermite was playing. I even had one that would land on the far Snowmobile in the back. You used to be able to do this really cool bank parkour. You could blow up the wall with like a C4 or impact and then balance beam your way across the lobby and then shoot anybody that was running down towards the bank garage. It was one of my favorite spawn peaks on bank. You used to be able to completely destroy desks, and when combined that with the old siege lighting, you could just simply prone in some crazy corners and be nearly invisible. This was also before Siege had rim lighting on, so there was no player outlines. There's something about the old lighting on Villa, especially in the bedroom, where it just looks so nice. I don't know what exactly it is, it just looks crisp and real. Really hard to describe, but yeah, this lighting just looks so good to me. There was a vault prompt that existed that you could just run to within like 3 seconds of spawn, and you could just hit this vault prompt and you would just immediately be in the ground. Would have been a crazy hide and seek spot, and you could just rappel to get out of here. So if you're a defender and get out in there, you'd be stuck. This is a funny random one. Canal used to have this entire row of windows, and it made for some of the craziest vault camera throws that you could land outside. The average player was just spawn peeking out of these, but the genius players were throwing vault cams and spawn peeking out of them. For a short period of time, for some reason when attackers would melee bandit charged battery walls, they would take like a huge bonus damage to the point where you could only melee a wall 5 times before you died. Typically it would only do a few ticks of damage, so I don't know what would cause this, but it was a pretty funny glitch. You used to be able to place deployable shields and then run on top of them. You could use this to get some of the wildest, most unorthodox angles that this time in Siege had ever seen. This was the first molecule peak that I've ever recorded. Between certain reinforced walls, you used to be able to have tiny gaps. Old Maestro voice lines used to reference the small hitbox of Ash's head, or what it seemed like a small hitbox for.
How does anyone manage to shoot Ash? Her head is so small.
The melee in the old E3 build of Rainbow Six Siege was more like a lunging smack instead of an actual punch. Individual operator stats used to be a thing. You used to be able to see your KD, total XP, total kills, time played, and a few other things. This is a really cool feature, and I think that they should bring this back. The GS8 compensator was the only pistol that had a compensator at this time. I don't think anybody knows why this one was chosen for it. On old Skyscraper, if you meleeed the drum, it would actually have a drum sound effect. This is the ACOG version of the E3 version of Rainbow Six Siege. It's evolved quite a lot. Capital used to be able to shoot his fire bolts through different gaps and tiles of the roof of Villa, and you could actually get these to land in some really common anchor spots like the bathroom or an Astro. The Showdown event is already an event that not a lot of Siege people remember, but if you want to take it even a step further, there was an Easter egg inside of the Showdown event that was the DeLorean vehicle from Back to the Future. This specific one's even hidden inside of the cave, just like Back to the Future 3. Sometimes just putting up simple barricades back in OG Siege was super glitchy and would push you back and push you all over the place. This was the first across the map angle I ever learned. It was from Zyronic on Canal, It would go through like 2 doorways and 4 windows, just something absolutely ridiculous, literally from the construction spawn all the way to the other side of the map. I don't know if this is the first accidental midair ever recorded, but you used to be able to go in between the skylight, like the top railing and the edge, and glide back and forth and do a parkour drop to land onto top yellow. You could even take this one step further, break the soft wall, and then your body would actually fit in between this rotate to go into the office. Back when you could TK in the prep phase, there was a trend that went around for a very short period of time in early Siege, where you would purposefully try to jump your drone up next to the head level of other defenders and try to get them to get TK'd in the prep phase. I only ever landed it once, and obviously this was a terrible use of utility, but it was a pretty funny trend while it lasted. This was one of the funniest old school Evil Eye tricks that you could do. It was outside of the snowmobile garage on Chalet. You could just go outside, turn left, and place it next to this tree. It would stay super well hidden, and by the time the thermites would figure out what was going on, typically you would have already gotten rid of at least one of their charges. In one of the first cinematics in Rainbow Six Siege, we actually got 2 face reveals, and this first one, not a lot of people actually know about, but people suspect that it's Monty, and that's because this date, December 26, 1994, lines up with his current biography. The second one is Bandit, which definitely makes more sense now, especially since we actually know what he looks like. Ubisoft has showed us. On Old Cafe, Nico showed me this crazy line of sight where you could actually get on top of the staircase railing and have an angle over a reinforced wall all the way through the fireplace. There used to be a bug where you could actually use a drill as your gun. Well, not really. It was a visual bug, but it would look like you're using a drill as a gun. It had to do when you were placing Kapkan traps by windows that were right next to each other, and this would sometimes happen. Honestly, one of the best bugs that's ever existed in the game. Dangleberries and Noted together discovered a method on how you could get into some really crazy spots in the game. They figured out that you could actually get a vault prompt over a friend that's holding a mirror shield. By doing this, we got into some of the craziest spots. Not just crazy, but also crazy high up. Glaz's rifle used to deal 180 damage. This means that he could one-shot any operator. In the E3 build of Siege, the kill cams used to actually be in the third-person point of view. The third-person point of view did eventually make it into Siege, but only on the bombers of T-Hunt. This is the cutscene that would play if you failed to save Jaeger in the Outbreak event. In the Siege Alpha, there was a graph that would show when you got a kill or when somebody died. It would also even show when in the round that it happened. This would be another really cool addition if they added it back into Siege. Back in the day, you could actually turn away from flashbangs to avoid getting blinded. Now, as long as they land within a certain distance of you, you get blinded no matter what. Opponent nameplates used to be visible, and Smoke could actually see them through his smoke canister, which was insanely broken. It was basically like a Glaz on defense. This is what Mute's OG victory pose used to look like. I'm not sure why they got rid of it. On Old Cafe, you used to be able to break open a huge section above the reinforced walls, and then you could vault on top of the red stairs railing and get a line of sight all the way back to that wall that's by the drone hole now. The old Twitch drone pickup animation was pretty funny looking. It looked like she would just slap her 2 hands together in order to pick up the drone. You used to be able to prone on elevated surfaces and then just crawl off, and for whatever reason, your character would stay floating. If you did this on a high enough surface, you could literally shelf yourself. Doc's always been the best runout operator. He used to be able to overheal himself so much that you could just tank the claymore and run out anyways. You used to be able to place deployable covers next to barricaded doorways, and then if you opened up the bottom of the barricade, you could prone under it, and it would, for some reason, just push your character down. Players would use this to get into vehicles and also just into the floor. The community eventually evolved it and would actually have lineups, like to get into a refrigerator. You used to be able to hide items and gadgets inside of broken things like frost mats. This is actually one of the first Pro League tricks that I've ever learned. There used to be a balcony outside of Master Bedroom on Chalet, and there was this really crazy parkour flank that you could go down where you're basically snowboarding down a tree and then you land by the garage and then you can re-enter the map. There used to be this really early angle that you could jump up and pre-fire on to get an angle onto yellow stairs. A lot of times people would just vault up here and get a free wall bang on defenders that are rotating up. You used to be able to hide frost mats and other gadgets inside of plants because they used to not break. Now plants just kind of disintegrate when you place something inside of them. There used to be zero cover if you climbed up the K9 balcony ladder, and so one workaround that a lot of Siege players started doing is climbing up the old office ladder, and then you could actually run and get a vault prompt onto the K9 balcony and then pre-fire the office door. This was one of the first original Siege parkour tricks that was really widespread in the community. There used to be these gaps in the top of old master bedroom, and you could place inside Valkyrie cameras that could still see the outside that you could use to spawn peek people that are coming from the cliffside spawn. Believe it or not, tower used to actually be a split bomb site. Not just that, but the wall on the staircase was also soft, so you could watch this doorway from here. This is the old texture glitch that would happen on Villa sometimes. It would literally just spawn random objects that had no collision. It would block a lot of people's point of view. This is the iconic clip of the creator at the time named Breaks, who was trying to figure out how to get into the objective in garage. Old clubhouse was very confusing.
I don't know how to get in the room. I don't know how to speak to you, you fucking monk.
Are you retarded?
Yes.
Get in.
How? Down below? I can't. How do I go down? There's things. The stairs.
Get in there, you shit! Gold medal for you!
Sometimes when you would reinforce a wall next to a castle barricade, it would create a few pixels of a gap that you could use to hold an angle, and it was nearly impossible to fight back. I don't know why this happened, and it would only happen in specific locations, but I do remember this one in Connector on Chalet. You used to be able to put bullet holes inside of castle barricades with the boss G. This was also at a time when just regular bullet holes in soft walls were a thing, so you had to worry about bullet holes in castle barricades and soft walls. This was a really common spawn peak on border back in the day because there used to not be a gate blocking the south spawn. People would just run out of detention, turn left, and then spray down this entire lane. Not only could you stand on shields, but they could also handle weight, so you could drop from hatches, land on shields, and then use it to get into some of the craziest hiding spots that we've ever done in Siege. For some reason, Grim had Ash's voice lines in Article 5.
Swapping bags! 5 seconds. Loading bags!
Another thing from the early build of Siege was being able to take cover behind a friend that was using a shield. You can see this character having his hand up on the shield, and you can see in one of these clips here that the shield actually could break down a wall, which is kind of a callback to the cover of the game. Vinka and Lion were the only operators to have their regular uniforms in Article 5, since they're basically hazmat suits, and if he chose to use the unicorn headgear for Tachanka, it would make him headless. On this canal hatch, you used to be able to go prone, push forward into the corner, and then when you would stand up, you would be elevated. This would give you an angle over one of the shelves that you normally wouldn't be able to see over. This is the old canal map, and everybody would push through this door if you didn't recognize it. The van that everybody parkours up to get onto the balcony used to be much further away from the main entrance, and even with Ash, it would be a lot harder to hit. You still could do it, it was just a lot harder because for whatever reason, the van was put further away, and in new builds of Siege, it's closer. In this very short and very early clip of Siege, it almost looks like this character pulls out his secondary, kind of like a Call of Duty Last Stand. Imagine getting a down on somebody and then him pistol whipping you. This was the first 3-4 angle that I ever learned on PC. It was on the old canal, and people could safely do this because it was from the garage, and it would go all the way up into the connector between the two main sites on the top floor. In old Siege, there was a lot of random soft walls that were impossible to reinforce. For example, there's this wall here between the hall and games. You can completely open up this wall and you wouldn't be able to stop it. It seems like now when the devs make maps, they really take in all these details into account. It's a pretty cool thing. In the E3 build of Siege, we can see a sniper outside of the house, and this was the E3 trailer, so we're not sure if this is an early build of Glaz or maybe something entirely different. You used to be able to enter a certain amount of characters to have the perfect space, and then you could do an in bracket, somebody's name, and then an end bracket, and make it look like you were typing as somebody else. This was eventually patched because people started using it to have people TK because they were pretending to go AFK, even though it wasn't even the player typing. This is the lighting of old Siege, and I think the original creator of this video put it perfectly where he says that looking outside was like just looking straight into the sun. You used to be able to just do a simple vault prompt and get on top of the cafe skylight. If you were able to get a diffuser down next to the bomb here, it would be almost impossible for the defenders to retake this. They tried to patch this a few different times and we kept getting up here, but eventually, as of right now, they have done so much, it's very difficult to get on top of the skylight again. There used to be a wobbling victory screen glitch, and nobody really knows what would trigger this, but the victory screen would literally just wobble around a random section of the map and then show a random part of the sky. You used to be able to crawl your way into this shelf. You'd get kind of stuck, but Cav used to have impacts, and so you could basically just explode out of this shelf and surprise the crap out of anybody. It looked really funny when doing it, and it was definitely worth a few damage that you would take. This is the operator selection screen from the closed alpha. The overall idea and feel of it is exactly the same as it is now, but the logos are completely different. This was one of the first ever parkour spawn peaks that I found. I would purposefully waste my C4, blow a huge hole in this wall, and then run and vault over onto this roof and then spawn peek anybody that are running up the stairs from their spawn. This was a lot of people's go-to Valkyrie camera runout spawn kills on Skyscraper. This is back when the Skyscraper balcony would wrap all the way around. Just look at that balcony, that's crazy. When Vigil first came out, you could just spam his ability and go straight to the top of the leaderboard because you would just keep getting points. There was this parkour line on old Skyscraper that would allow you to pretty much cover the entire north side of the map and the entire east side of the map. If a player did this parkour line, you could see into the majority of windows on these sides of the map. Wasn't the most helpful to teammates because you were outside for like the first minute and a half, 2 minutes, but it was still fun to do. Most people know about that glitch that happened where you could have a deployable shield as a face and completely stop bullets. Not a lot of people remember that after that happened, Ubisoft just completely disabled shields, and even if you had one, you couldn't even use it and pull it out. The most unorthodox use of old Tachanka was to actually place their gun turret next to a windowsill and then use it to run on because it wouldn't destroy it, and then you could land inside of windowsills. Consulate was one of my favorite maps to do this on, but when Tower came out, we also evolved it into this because Tower was claimed to be like the only map you can't spawn peek on, and this was one of the go-to strats if you wanted to spawn peek on it. This is the Apocalypse event, and out of all events, this is the event that seems like most Siege players don't remember. There used to be a really thick red smoke that would glow and come off of the old bombs in Siege, and you could use this in specific bomb sites to have some pretty crazy angles. The main one that I always think about when I think of the old bombs in Siege is the one on Big Window of Oregon. There used to be a way to parkour out of border, and it was really simple. You just had to vault over this cone and then balance beam your way across this barricade. After that, you could prone by this tank and get elevated and go on top of the cliff. Not very useful, pretty terrible lines of sight, but it was pretty funny. But also, you could misstep at any point and then just fall to your death. In the E3 build of Siege, no outside windows or doors started barricaded. You would have to run around and actually close each one. There used to be a trick called Repel Cancel, where you could basically just spam your repel button and then cancel it before it finishes, and it would elevate your character. You could do this to get onto the skylight like on Villa. When Bola first started popping off, everybody thought Bola was a cheater. And then a couple years later, Bola ended up on a pro team with some of the people that called him a cheater. Then soon after that, he won 6 Invitational with them. You used to be able to place silent breach charges on top of the glass without breaking them on windows. Now when you place breach charges on top of windows, it automatically breaks the glass and it's crazy loud. If you vaulted up on top of this spot on coastline, you could actually rappel, go all the way to the right, and then go down until you land outside of that stone fence. Soon it would count as being out of bounds, but if you sprinted, you could make it to this boat, and if you do make it to the boat in time, the boat counts as being inside of the map. You used to be able to vault on top of the old railings on Old Chalet and then shimmy your way to the edge to have a crazy angle onto the cliffside spawn. You'd be able to headshot people as soon as they vault up on top of that first rock. This was a staircase that used to exist on Cafe called Bar Stairs. This staircase would have led up to what is now Pillar, but people used to hang out around here and then hold angles down into Small Bakery. It was a pretty good spot. When Yacht first came out, the loading screen actually had a random recruit that was just standing out there on the ice. In the E3 build of Siege, we can see a completely new type of ACOG that was featured on Ash. There used to be a really small gap above doorways, and if you could figure out a way to get an elevated angle above it, you could actually use it, and people would like come up to old doors and place fuse charges or even regular barricades So if anybody approached a door, you would actually be able to pre-fire the heads. This only worked in very specific spots, but just a random old thing. In early leaked photos of Ella, she was actually blonde, and then they changed her to green hair later on. There used to be a drone hole that you could just rappel up from the back alley spawn. You could see past white stairs all the way into the reading room. This used to be one of the most broken drone holes that existed in the game. This is an early design of boarding up a door. You can see he goes like down around in like a circle motion. Nomad's air jabs would sometimes push defenders through solid walls. Yes, full concrete walls on different levels. It was crazy. When surface entrance was part of the site on coastline, you could actually plant outside of this door. I'm guilty of using this a couple times. Randomly vaulting into courtyard and then turning around and vaulting into the hallway would sometimes just kill you. This is the opening to the very first season of Siege, Operation Black Ice. On Old Border, the archives wall used to be really close to this shelf that everybody goes up onto. You could not only get angles onto the hall, you could even vault over this and go for some late round flanks after attackers pushed into the fountain. This is the weird deformed operator glitch that would sometimes happen. Nobody really knows why it would happen, but it kind of looks like the character would be getting pulled by something under the map. We do think that the hitboxes were the same, but this is just a crazy visual bug. There used to be a really tall bamboo asset on Skyscraper that used to make for really good cover. I don't believe that there's a plant or asset like this in the game anymore. Now, if you remember those old windows that we would throw C4s through on Chalet, you could also stand on top of the railing, and if anybody spawned the helipad spawn and chose to run to the right, you could actually see them running down this path while standing on the railing. In the Siege closed beta, the OG Hollow site was way more zoomed in, almost like the old 1.5. When bar stairs was a thing, you could get this elevated angle in the mining room onto it, and anybody that was coming up the bar stairs would get headshotted before they could even check what's going on. In Siege Alpha, the site selection map would actually kind of look like a blueprint instead of a more realistic version that we have now. Pillow assets in Siege used to not have collision, and so you would be able to actually prone inside of them for some really funny hiding spots. There used to be these boxes that you could vault onto downstairs of Oregon, and if you placed them in these locations, you could cut off really good doorways inside a meeting if anybody was above trying to drone. Sometimes when you didn't make a big enough hole to easily fit through, your character would get stuck, and then once you open it up more, you would still be stuck in the same animation, so your character would just be sliding around on their knees. In the alpha and beta, instead of your teams just being your team and opponents, the teams were actually Raven Shield and Rogue Spear. This was the most OP desk that ever existed in Rainbow Six Siege. This was the desk in the front office in Bartlett University, paired with nighttime, paired with having no player outlines. And I know some of you OGs watching this video have gotten a kill from this exact spot before too. This is the big window on Old House with the slits in it, and you could see pretty much the entire top floor. A pretty funny bug with Mira used to sometimes happen when placing it, where she would kind of go far away from the wall, turn around, her arms would look like they're getting broken, and then she would still somehow place it, even though she wasn't even touching the wall. You used to be able to turn frost mats invisible by having a friend TK you after you start the animation of picking up the frost mat. You would die, but your frost mat would still be there, and it would be 100% invisible but still fully functioning. This is the shiny suppressor glitch. It would sometimes happen where your suppressor gets replaced by a freaking star and it would just shine there for the entire round. On Old Oregon, you could rappel up and you could actually shoot a Capital firebolt through this molecule of a gap. Wasn't really useful though because nobody really bandit tricked here. When Cav first came out, if you interrogated somebody that was too close to a door frame, sometimes when you finished the animation, your character would just get stuck in that wall and you wouldn't be able to move. In the closed alpha, Pulse's heartbeat scanner would show the exact distance of opponents and teammates, and it was blue. There was this OP Valcam spot on Old Clubhouse between the red neon lights, and it was basically impossible to see. It was partially inside of it, and so if there was an IQ, you could destroy it, but besides that, pretty much invisible to the naked eye. If you knocked out some of the floor in the executive office upstairs, you could actually place this Valkyrie camera on this one-way floor. Picture a literal one-way mirror, except it's a literal floor. On IQ Situation, on Old Oregon, they made the basement inaccessible. But for whatever reason, after the rework, you could access it from this one single wall. All other points were still blocked off, and there was even an ammo box down here. This was a funny spot that you could do with Dangleberries and Noted's find of how you could vault over friends' mirror shields. you could actually get behind the hot water heaters and you would scare the crap out of any attackers that are walking down the hall. Some spots using this trick would get pretty intricate. Like you could have 2 shields, you could walk on one shield, run to the other shield, and then the mirror could do the same, and then you could vault over that mirror from that second shield and get into some really wild spots. The combination of not having a rim light, plus it being a night mode map, plus just the overall old siege lighting, this made for probably the craziest cav spot that ever existed in the game. And then there was this one. This one was just straight up the highest location we ever got in the game using the mirror vault trick. The smoke from smoke canisters would actually go through hard walls. This obviously was like a glitch to me, but it was something that was also just widely accepted in Siege and even legal in Pro League, which makes no sense. If you put a deployable cover at the top of a hatch, you could actually stop orcs when he first came out. So shields used to not snap onto surfaces, and so if you placed a shield inside of the dirt tunnel doorway, you could actually make it unvaultable. This was one of the first bunk bed parkour spots, and you could just place a shield, vault over it, and then work your way onto the top of the bunk bed. This is before attic was connected, and so you could just watch this one main doorway and surprise the crap out of a ton of people. When operators would vault, they would sometimes float and continue moving on other players' screen, a very unintentional advantage that the players would accidentally give themselves. You used to be able to take advantage of the way that barricades covered windows by smacking a precise spot, and it would open up a few pixels underneath that you would be able to use and see out of. Sometimes the main menu would bug out, and the characters that are supposed to be on the menu would lose their texture and their features were just totally random. Kind of creepy, kind of funny. You used to be able to place shields and then just simply vault into windows. You could do this to spawn peek on essentially any map that existed in the game. You used to be able to climb a ladder from the helipad spawn and get up on top of this tower. This tower is kind of still here in the game, but the whole thing is completely fenced off now. There used to be skylights on Chalet that would let natural light in, and one of the first Pro League Valkyrie camera spots that I ever learned was this lineup throwing a Valkyrie camera out of one of these skylights, and it would land on the chimney for some really good views. Back in the days of the funny looking sprint animation, sometimes you could just straight up sprint through Capcan traps. Pretty funny because the second person wouldn't even check and then just typically get blown up. One of the first methods to get onto purple tarps only took a single vault prompt, and then you could run onto this railing and literally just sprint and land onto the purple tarp. This is also when the purple tarp was solid. Now this entire wooden scaffolding is just soft, you fall through it, and the purple tarp is soft, so you would just fall through it too if you got to it.